We're starting a little early.
I hope so.
Yep.
All right. Well, welcome to our work session dated June 8th, 2026 at 5:30. Whatever, half the time you want roll call, half the time you don't.
We don't need a roll call for this.
We're all here. We're all
here.
present.
Yep.
Yes.
We're here to talk about, talk with Rum River about building inspections, permits, fees, etc. Would you like to come up, Andy?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So thank you for the opportunity to go through this because we've actually had several iterations of this. We had the proposal itself, the line-by-line breakdown, then a summary, and now this we're able to provide. It is a summary of the summary, but it also gets a lot more detailed in the percentages as far as the adjustments, whether they be up or down. So I like the way this information was presented to you in writing. We looked at it again just before we came to the meeting here, and I believe it answers all of the questions. If there's any questions in depth, in further than that, that's why we're here.
Angie, anything to start us off with, or?
I guess the biggest question that I had was about permit fees and what's even required, if they're all required by statute or if there's some on here that are still recommendations.
Thank you for the question. We did identify that in an orange color, which was optional. And
Okay.
So there's actually 3 items on the agenda or on the fee schedule that are optional, if you will. They're related to the commercial temp heating. What that is when you have a propane source as temporary heat for a commercial structure, that there is a permitting process that's optional, some would say recommended, whereas the protection of that LP tank would be identified or would be protected by bollards or concrete blocks so that nobody would run into it, as well as the gas lines themselves that run to the temporary heaters. In addition to that, there would be verification of the combustion air and makeup air so that the space that under heat and cover, it's called, that area is not starved of oxygen. So that's being done through what a commercial temporary mechanical permit. That is optional. That is in there. If the council so chooses to include that, we would administer that accordingly. If not, then that would be excluded. And then there's also, the conversation that we had over the moved-in structures, the mileage, and I would propose that we just do away with that. That's more confusing than it needed to be. And in truth, those structure moving permits comes up very, very infrequently. And if they do come up, they're not that far away, so I'd rather not confuse that issue any further. And then also the septic abandonment. So under MPCA rules, when you abandon a septic system, there's a requirement to go through an abandonment process. There's a form to be filled out and an inspection to be done. That's not a mandated process or a mandated permit. It is a mandated process and form, but that is a little bit more discretionary in the sense that if you wanted to waive that fee, you would have that option as well. So those are the 3 that are identified in orange as far as being optional or discretionary.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question.
Anything, John?
Well, I appreciate all the hard work you put into it. It's definitely detailed, and I do appreciate the summary of the summary. Appreciate that. What I don't like is the increases, of course. I don't think, this is my personal opinion, today is the right time to do that. The rest of it was great, but the increases, I'm not thrilled about.
And neither are we.
I get it. I just know that today, with the ever-increasing cost of everything other than air, that I don't know if the constituents would be real thrilled about seeing more increases.
If I might, thank you for pointing that out. We also are experiencing the increases in food and fuel, taxes, insurance, and state mandates, as is every small business. So I appreciate that point. Thankfully, when you look through the percentages, they are very modest in the percentages. And in fact, there's more neutral and decreases than increases. That's where Carrie and I, and with Roxanne's help too, we were able to go through and combine those permit fees. For example, homeowners that are doing their own basement finishes, they have the plumbing and mechanical fees folded into those. That's a saving of $250 per project. That is due to our coordination with the applicant to make sure that those things all happen at the same time. We've also established maximum fees on accessory buildings, decks, and basement finishes. There's nobody else in the state that does that. So I'm really happy and pleased to the point that we've been able to do that. So we do find every way possible, Mayor and Council, that we can hold fees as they are. there are gonna be some that have to go up just due to the nature of the process. And I feel very comfortable with the percentages as they are.
Thank you.
Anything, Paul?
No, I can't help but think I have to be looking at it wrong. Just one of the ones, and like you said, I've been looking at a lot of them, and it's small dollars. You're talking $13 increase from what it was, and I'm not worried about those. But the one I'm looking at, you'll know right away, but it says non-residential and multifamily plumbing permit and plan reviews. Calculate it for 2025 was 2,351. The new change would be 4,797. That's a lot to swallow. $2,000 for the same thing we were doing last year, and it's $2,000 more this year.
Understood. Now, remember, those are due to the state changes in their fee structure and calculation. It used to go by fixture units, and now it goes by valuation. So if a commercial applicant went to the state to get a commercial plumbing permit, that's what they pay. So the state realizes too, is that they were behind many, many years. They hadn't updated their fees in many, many years. So that's due to the increase and the realization at the state labor and industry that their fees were woefully inadequate for a number of years.
But we wouldn't need to adopt that if we didn't want to, right?
Then how would it be paid for?
Wouldn't it just stay the same?
So then how would that be paid for? I guess how would the inspections happen and how would the inspector be compensated?
So you're saying last year you weren't compensated to do that?
We were, but not to the level that we should have, because as we agreed, we followed the state structure, the state fees. So if, Mayor and Council, if you would like, we can go back to the state handling those fees. That's fine with me. That's fine with us. We could revert back to the state handling the plumbing permits, if that's what you would so choose. But then those fees would go up as well. We don't have any control over those fees. That's one of the things, unfortunately, that we don't have any control over, is what the state charges for their permits. And since we're taking on the same responsibility as the state, we're asking to be compensated the same.
Well, the hardest part for me is that if somebody doing that inspection last year was going to be going belly up from charging $2,300, they wouldn't be in business anymore. So I know that that somebody was able to make a living off of $2,300, but now to go to $4,700 for the sake of, because the state mandates it. It's different. Like you come and you say, hey, my operating expenses went up 45% and I need to cover this, this, and this. It's hard to explain. It's going to be hard to explain to anyone, hey, it's going up because the state mandates it. And that's the only answer I have for them, is the state mandates it. But I know that's a lot of things. My car tabs are the same way and everything else. But it's
Right.
It's like, when does it stop? The fixtures, I remember you used to be able to go out and buy a sink fixture for $150. Now they're $500. Well, no wonder why the evaluation fee's going up, because everything is doubled and tripled. But does that mean the fee to inspect that same faucet, because it's $500 now, takes any more time and effort than it did when it was at $250? That's where I struggle really hard, because I understand when operating costs go up, but because the appliance went up, shouldn't make it harder to go out and inspect it. So,
And it's not necessarily that. Look at what it takes to do those inspections. You need a master plumber's license in order to have the delegation agreement, whether you work for the state of Minnesota or you work with Rum River Consultants. Either way, you need to have that state master plumber's license. You go through the testing process, you go through their continuing education process. So the fees to hourly inspect a roof are drastically different than that to do the plan review and the inspection for a commercial plumbing project. So thankfully, to your point, council members, is that the projects last year, yeah, they were underfunded, absolutely. But thankfully, in Oak Grove, there were very few and far between, and we were able to absorb that cost. So that's one of those that we don't have any control over.
So you don't have control over the amount, like, you don't have to charge what the state charges, do you? That's just the choice that you
Again, the fees are up to the council. But I would say that if you don't necessarily agree with that increase, then I would say then let's go back to the state, because that's the way things were used to be. We were trying to be helpful to the few commercial projects that the city has, and understandable is that we were trying to be helpful as well. And we agreed to follow their fees at that time. Now their fees had changed, so if a project goes to the state, those are the fees that would be paid to the state. And we're simply asking for the same consideration.
Oh, go ahead. No, I was just going to finish. And I did kind of forget, not to say you should stick it to the businesses, but I did kind of forget it's non-residential, meaning this isn't for the person with the plumbing in their house. This is for the others. So,
Thank you for
I mean,
the clarification.
yeah, no, and I just saw it. Not that I like it any better, but it's a little better because we don't have as much business out here.
And
But-
that's the unfortunate part about this, is that we're in front of councils to explain this. The State Department of Labor and Industry made this decision to not change their fees for many, many years. All of a sudden they did, and we're the ones out, taking the brunt of it.
taking the heat for it.
We are, and that's unfortunate, but that is what it is, and we're having this conversation with councils across the state. We represent a number of cities across the state, and this is something that we're having to communicate with everybody. And if there's any disappointment in that, I'd love to give you the name of the person at DLI to call. Seriously, because it was their decision to not update those fees, and I forget how many years. I don't like to guess on something like this, but it was a number of years that they did not change their fees, and that was up to them. Now that they did, they upped them so drastically and so quickly. That's why we're having this conversation. If, however, they had incrementally increased them over the years, we wouldn't have this kind of ice cream headache right now.
I'm good for now.
Anything, Mike? Yeah, I'm concerned about the fee increases, just like John is. I mean,
That one in particular, are there any others?
with everything. I mean, and not even just this, everything in the whole community out there, every place is raising, and someplace it's gotta stop. And so I think if we can control some of this stuff, it's just doing our little part to save the taxpayers.
And we have. Again, we have controlled the fees that we can. You can see a number of these decreases. A number of these projects have decreased. Please also look at those, where we've been able to consolidate fees and decrease fees. Yes, there are a couple of increases, but that was unavoidable.
I lost my train of thought now. I can't remember where I was going with it. I'll have to come back to you, Andy, if I remember it on that one. But I do have a couple other questions. You charge now for replacing or a permit is charged for replacing a water softener in a person's house, right?
Correct.
Was that approved last time on the fee schedule, or when was that approved? Because I just heard about that.
Water conditioning systems have been a requirement of the state building code as long as I remember. So water conditioning, water softener, is that what you're referring to?
Yes, for replacing a water softener, it's a new fee, right?
I don't recall if that's a new fee or if that's, Roxanne, can you help with?
Well, and the reason I ask is
It's a set
because-
fee for plumbing.
What's that?
It's a set fee for plumbing. So whether it be a water heater or a water softener or plumbing in conjunction with a bathroom remodel or a house addition, it's what's called a set fee, and I believe that's $125. And I don't know that fee had changed. No, that fee had stayed the same.
So what's the fee at?
125.
$125. Water conditioning system is in the 2025 fee schedule at $125.
So that hasn't
So that
changed.
was okay. And the reason I was asking, it takes a long time to get my question out here. I was talking to a guy that works at Culligan, and they just started charging for it about a month ago. He lives in Oak Grove here, and he thought it was a brand new fee that was scheduled and stuff.
4715, Minnesota Chapter 4715 of the Plumbing Code requires permits for water conditioning systems. And every city that I've been a part of has followed suit with that. So if he's just now aware of it, that's unfortunate.
Yeah,
In Ramsey, you say?
No, in Oak Grove.
Oh, that's been in our fee schedule.
Well, he was
So
talking about several of the
if
other.
he's been changing them out without permits, then maybe that's another conversation.
I don't know if Culligan really does that and stuff, if they need permits and stuff, you know. He had a list of what the permit fee was for all the different cities and stuff, and they're not all the same either.
That's unfortunate, right?
Well, we're one of the higher ones, so it is unfortunate.
Well, if other cities decide to subsidize their permitting, then they can do that.
Well, anyway, I had to ask about that, because when he told me that, he lives not too far from me, and he works at Culligan and said, hey, you guys got a new fee there and stuff.
It's not. It's
So,
not a new
it
fee.
was a
So
new
if you can
fee to the-
inform him of that, that would be great.
It was a new fee to the workers anyway, apparently.
He may have just discovered it, but it's not a new fee.
I don't, yeah.
It was in last year's fee schedule.
Okay, and that's what I was trying to get at originally, is
Right.
if that was from back then or if it just popped up. And then the $250 for doing soil boring testing. You still want to do the same thing on that soil?
Well, again, that was oh, go ahead.
We removed that from your conversation on the last time Andy presented, is we removed that from the fee schedule. I had advised in my email to city administrator Whitman that we just removed that from the fee schedule.
There didn't seem to be any appetite for that. Is
Right.
that true?
I would agree with that statement. And the reason I'm asking is because we did talk about possibly having that as an alternative thing for somebody to request if they wanted to do it and stuff. But you just removed it completely now then.
If you want it to be put in as an option, we can.
Oh, I don't want
certainly
anything to
add
add more fees to people and stuff, but I just wanted to get a clarification at least on that so we know. what we're
Thank you for that point, because that was not included in here. We just pulled it out based on last time we were here in front of you.
That's it for now, unless I think about what I was asking originally, and I can't remember what it was now.
Well, interrupt me if you do. A couple questions for Andy. I just want to make sure I understand, whether I agree or disagree, I just want to make sure that I understand this whole plumbing fee code thing that we were just talking about. Because I'm sure if any of us up here are a little confused by it, there's probably somebody who's maybe watching at home that is wondering the same thing. So I just want to make sure I understand. You're saying that's the state fees, and this is for like the commercial plumbing that Councilmember Tradewell had brought up. So that's a fee that the state sets, but does that have to be adopted? Could we just say, we're not going to charge that much, which would then give you the option to either, I'll do it for that price, or I'm not going to do it anymore? Or are you saying that's what it has to be?
I'm saying that's what the state charges for them providing that service, and that's what we would like to charge for us providing the same service. If you would like to, council, if you would like to say, no, we're gonna change that fee to $5. Andy, Rum River, would you do this for $5? And I'll say no. I said, then we can go back to the state, go back to the old way. We can wait for them to do their plan review when they get to it, and then they would be subject to those fees, which are the same. We're not asking for anything more.
No, I just wanted to make sure that I was understanding.
No,
right,
that is correct.
We could charge less, but then you may not be willing to do the work.
That is exactly correct.
Charging, yeah.
You want to come up just so that way people can hear you from home?
Another option in regards to the state delegated plumbing fees, as you can see on page 2, it just states that it went from per fixture units. That's why there's a change from the current to the new for the value-based, and that's why there's an increase in regards to that. The second part on page 2, we have opted for the non-residential and multifamily plumbing permit, plan review included, for a new single fixture permit, much like a water heater, water conditioner, if it's same for same that is being replaced. The minimum would be through that state fee schedule of $270, but we have opted to provide that as a $210 because we feel that is more commensurate with the service of going out there for the final inspection with that. So we are trying to assist with some of that decrease already. Secondly, with the state delegated plumbing fees, if the Rum River became your delegated official for plumbing 2-3 years ago, there aren't too many permits that come through the city for that particular work. However, since Rum River partners with the city on that, the city receives a percentage of that permit and plan review fee. That would be an option that we would still be able to charge what the state is charging for that if you wanted to not receive part of that percentage, and then we would be able to pass that on to the customer. Otherwise, the state, if you decide that Rum River would not be your plumbing delegated inspectors and plan review, the state would charge and the state would keep all of that money. So that gives you at least another option.
Thank you for pointing that out. I missed that.
You
Good
answered
point.
my second question. So I was just wondering, I would assume the state would be what the state fee is.
Yep.
Correct, and then the state collects and keeps all of that fee, whereas when we have a local partnership, the city is able to retain some of that fee yourself for internal operations.
Okay.
And like you said, thank you for that, Roxanne, is that if you wanted to, we could work that through so that those monies would go towards the fee, and that wouldn't necessarily be retained, correct?
Correct, it wouldn't be, that percentage then wouldn't be retained by us, but it
would-
wouldn't also be retained by the city.
Right, it would be
So
It'd be
lower.
lessened.
It would be lessened.
Correct.
I was just trying to make sure that this was a negotiation, but if you decide not to do it, that's what the fees are gonna be through
Correct.
the state. So that you kind of answered both questions.
So it's, either way, it's gonna be less expensive to keep it in-house.
Right. My other two questions, when you come to baseline and the fee of $10, did we talk about the paper option? I don't know if anybody would even do it, but we're at least giving them the option.
And that paper, thank you for bringing that up. That paper option is really not a feasible option whatsoever, because when people have paper, then we enter that for them. So they still utilize the system. It's not any less work for anybody. It's simply a different process.
Right. I just like I told you last time, I have a problem with a fee on top of a fee.
And I understand that, and we are, again, trying to be transparent about utilization of technology in those processes, because those all come with a price tag.
And most people probably would do that. I'm thinking just for myself, and I'm not the only person. This is a small fee. When you're looking at pumping 2 septic systems, and there's the $20 and the other $10 fee, and another one at $20, a $10
And
fee.
I did misspeak last time. You want to take that?
Sure. So maintenance permits, we have been completing that for the city of Oak Grove. The city was doing that prior to Rum River doing that. And let me just reference it for you guys so that you can follow. It is on page 11, I believe. So the maintenance permit tracking for septic administration, city code and the MPCA require septic tanks be inspected and maintained at least every 3 years. Rum River has been the administrator of that process, I believe, since 2022, I think is when we took over. The city was, prior to that, was charging $5 in fiscal year 2020. They updated it to $10 per permit. This increase at $20 per permit, so it would not include a technology service charge with that. That would be all encompassing for that particular permit. This increase equates to less than 2 cents a day for a 3-year permit for that.
So I misspoke last time when I said the technology service was applicable to this permit, and is not.
And also that we are already providing that service and have been for quite a few years. I am happy to state that Baseline will be adding that as an additional module. Right now, we do it by spreadsheets, similar to what the city had been doing prior to us taking over that. That will assist us being able to either send it out via email and or postcards to those properties where we can cross-reference the compliant septics and also the maintenance permitting, and focus on those that have not pumped and or assessed their tank in those 3 years. And that is to help protect the groundwater, not only for that resident, but also the surrounding neighborhood, because we all share aquifers and various different things.
I think I already know what the answer is here, but I think it's good for everyone to know. At the end of the day, it's a negotiation. We either continue to have you do it at these rates, or we say we're not willing to do it, and you decide if you're willing to do it what we're willing to offer. So I think when it comes around with, I don't like the fee, blah, 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 I don't like them either, but I understand too, you have things you need to pay for. So somehow we either have to find some type of a compromise. Is that still where we're at, or are we at, this is the fee schedule, and if we want to continue contracting with you, we're just going to have to live with this? Or I guess I think it's just fair, instead of going in circles, like where are we at?
Well, I appreciate that, Mayor and Council. So this is the proposed fee schedule. You, of course, adopt the fee schedule as it is. We have put a lot of time and effort into analyzing, compiling, consolidating these fees, lowering them where they needed to be, and increasing them slightly where they needed to be. If there's any counter proposal, I'd like to hear the thought process and the reasoning behind that, quite frankly. Other than, we don't like an increase in fees. I don't like an increase in fees either. Please remember, our employees are residents of Oak Grove, St. Francis. Now then, they are. So we all are going through this. The increases in food and fuel and taxes, we're all in this together.
Right.
And I assure you, these fees are commensurate with the services that's required by the state of Minnesota.
Right. And I understand that. All I'm trying to do is, instead of just going in circles and we keep having more and more meetings, let's just throw it out there where we're at here. And Rum River's not the only one. Sheriff comes, we have conversations with him, or our finance firm, all these people. So we're trying to do the best we can to keep things as low as we can.
As are we.
Right, and so are you. So we're either going to have to come up with what we think is some type of a fair compromise, or live with what you're presenting, or figure out another plan. I think those are kind of the three options that we're going to have to figure out. I don't know if any other options. So I just don't want to continue to,
Right.
let's meet again in 2 months.
I appreciate that, because we've provided everything council has asked for, and I appreciate that exercise, because that now allows us to have everything that a council might ask for. Some are asking for the fee schedule. That's it. We provide that. Some are asking for a detailed breakdown. We've done that. Some are asking for a summary. We've done that as well with the color coding. And some have asked for percentages and a summary of the summary. We now have that as well. So thankfully for this interaction, this back and forth, we've been able to provide all information that anybody could possibly ask for. But again, what I would ask for is, if you have any counter proposals to this, I'd like to know where that comes from, other than a disappointment in the increase in fees as we all have experienced.
Right.
We don't like talking about fees either, and we don't.
And that's the other-
Please
thank you.
understand that.
And that's the other reason why we wanted to have this conversation and say, okay, no more for 3 years. This is where we need to go. For the next 3 years, let's just let the things sit where they are. And then in 3 years, then we could talk about it after that. So we don't have to talk about this every year. That was another concession that we were able to make. And I hope you understand and appreciate that.
Right. I was just throwing it out there as, realistically, that's the options we have. It's like when the sheriff comes, we either go with him, or we go with someone else, or we go with nobody. So I think just sometimes it's nice to know where we're at, versus just let's keep meeting and just, nobody's happy with anything. So,
Right, and our position was here, we provided every level of explanation, from the detailed all the way down to the summaries. And so therefore, if there's any counter proposal, I'd like to hear more about the line-by-line reasoning behind it.
So I would, unless you got something real quick, Paul. we
Real
have
quick.
3 minutes to the next
Yeah,
meeting.
so is that one fee the only fee that there's a 30%, or is there other fees like that where we could reduce, if we wanted to reduce what the city takes from it? And that would be the question, maybe a takeaway question, or if that's the only one.
That's the only fee that I can think of,
Okay.
is that you're referencing, is that if we didn't want to send it back to the state, kept it in-house, we could adjust those fees accordingly, so that the city's portion that you would no longer retain would go towards lowering the fee.
Okay,
There are percentages, though. We are paid up on a percentage, so if you wanted to renegotiate that part in order to do those savings, we certainly would be able to work with you on that. We love serving the community of Oak Grove. We hope that you guys continue to partner with us on that. And we would love to try and continue to work through this. I don't know if it's possible that if we have one particular liaison that is able to work with us in regards to that, so that we're not taking up the entire time for your workshop and or city council meeting. I don't know if that's permissible, but I just thought, put it out there in order to have this further conversation to make it
That's a good
easier.
suggestion. Thank you for that. We have done that in other cities as well, where we have a liaison, where we'd be able to collectively get your collective thoughts through one person. So again, we're not taking all of your time. Thank you for that.
I will, we're gonna end this meeting, but I'm not saying you have to stay. We can chat about some of that maybe towards council and mayor at the end of our council meeting, just to kind of get a direction. But I don't know how long the meeting's going, you don't have to stay for that, so. But I'm going to end this work session now, and we'll pick up a regular scheduled meeting here in about a minute or so.
thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Pardon?